before we dive into it, I just wanted to give a real quick shout out and appreciation to the sponsors of StartupSac, especially our gold level sponsors of Innovation and SMUD, but also other sponsors that include Weintraub Tobin, who we have John Icona here, Witten Law, Modetta Ventures, and Moss Adams. So we really appreciate the help the community organizations show in supporting us and financially so that we can do things like this. So I think it's time that we dive into the interview. And once I said in the chat room that I've got to thank Mariah Lichtenstern for making the introduction to us to Dr. Roshawnna Novellus. She is the founder and CEO of EnrichHER, which is a financial technology platform with regulatory approval to help women secure funding to grow their ventures. She's also launching, or has launched, All Rise Factory, which is a new program to fund new majority companies with plans to deploy $50 million, that's million dollars, to underinvested founders. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Cameron to start the interview.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. And I want to echo the huge thank you to Mariah for making the connection and just being such an ecosystem builder and community leader and helping the Sacramento region grow entrepreneurially, but doing it in an impactful and intentional way for all entrepreneurs. So appreciative of the connection and excited about the conversation. Jeff tackled a lot of the intro and bio of Dr. Novellus, and I just wanted to highlight some of these amazing accolades that she's received, and then also wanted to start with providing some additional context. So Dr. Novellus is a gender equality advocate who believes in economic empowerment and inclusive economic growth. Dr. Roshawnna has served on the Commission on Women for the City of Atlanta and was honored as one of the Women Who Means Business by the Atlanta Business Chronicle. She's been one of the 40 under 40 by the Georgia Trend. She's a Halcyon Fellow for Social Impact, one of the top 25 disruptors and innovators in tech, one of the 27 Black founders and investors to watch in 2019 by PitchBook. And lastly is a LinkedIn top voice in technology. And so you can see the impact that she's having on not only local ecosystems, but national ecosystems as it pertains to entrepreneurship and innovation. And one thing I noticed in doing my research was this quote, and I wanted to make sure all of you saw it, was Dr. Novellus's purpose is to use her knowledge and education and resources to give collaborative advice for entrepreneurs and raise the capital. And we're seeing that here today by her spending her time and her story with all of us. So wanted to thank her for dedicating her time and sharing that story with us. And lastly, before I jump in, wanted to provide a little bit of context for the conversation and really tackling this gender and equity gap around funding. And so there's some context I wanted to provide for some research from the Kauffman Foundation. And the research shows that between 2009 and 2017, only 2.2% of VC funding went to all female founding teams, and only 0.0006 went to Black women. And I just wanted to provide that context for this conversation because that is exactly what Dr. Roshawnna Novellus is tackling with her amazing solutions. And so, and jumping into the conversation, wanted to get to know you a little more as a person. I know I shared a lot of your accolades, but wanted to get to know you as a person and kind of understand who you are and what was some of your background.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful introduction. You hit all the key points, even quotes. Thank you, Cameron. That was great. So hi, everyone who is here. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to speak with all of you. So I am originally from San Diego, and I grew up near the border of Mexico. So in my mind, all communities were Black, Hispanic, and Filipino, and we all worked together. And it wasn't really until much later that I realized that that wasn't the case. My mother was a high school teacher, and so was my father, by the way. But my mother told me at the age of 12 that all women needed to be in charge of our own economic power. She wanted me to feel comfortable managing finances and making decisions on my own. So at that age, she started taking me with her to investment club meetings at her high school. And she empowered me to present on her behalf, to pick stocks on her behalf, so that I would be very knowledgeable about finances and stock at a young age. My mother was, of course, concerned about how she would pay for me to go to college. And I sat her down when I was 15 and told her, hey, I have this all worked out. I have a plan. And I just asked her to give me, 200 envelopes and stamps and let me execute my plan. So my plan was to tell my story to over 200 organizations across the country. I wrote letters, I typed them on a typewriter. I wrote letters and sent them out to organizations all the way from the Elks Club of Hawaii to the Coca-Cola Foundation to the Tuskegee Airmen. They all heard about me, knew my aspirations to be an engineer, and I told them about my work ethic, the whole nine. So as a result of this process, I was able to win over $600,000 in grant dollars, which paid for all of those degrees. And for those of you who don't know, so I did attend UC Santa Cruz and majored in computer engineering and business management economics. After that, I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for my master's and focused on information technology. And then George Washington University in DC, where I received my doctorate in computer engineering and finance. So I was able to raise all of those dollars at the age of 15, which enabled me to pursue my entire academic career without any concern for money. So when I moved to the DC area when I was about 22, I was hired by Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. So during the day, I did counterterrorism kind of work, and at night, I pursued my doctorate degree. And I realized that I was around all of these brilliant people with amazing academic credentials, but still a lot of them were afraid of finances. So I took it upon myself to accompany my peers when they purchased their first home. I ended up helping a lot of people when they were trying to figure out how to allocate their 401k. And after years of interacting with people, I firmly understood how much my mother helped me have a step ahead by empowering me with, financial, not only knowledge, but authority. So I knew I could make decisions and make them very well, and I didn't have any concern. So after I, finished my doctorate and became tired of counterterrorism work, because my job every day was figuring out ways that bad people would kill people, I said, hey, I want to allocate my time and resources and energy to helping people live out their dreams. So in 2010, I left the DC area and moved to Atlanta to start my entrepreneurial journey. And I'll just stop there. There's more, but I want to make sure Cameron can ask me any questions about what I just said before I move forward.
No, that's amazing. You're a born fundraiser, raising over $600,000 to fund your education. And one of the things I was thinking, any of those stock picks you made for your mom early on, did any of those end up cashing out?
It's funny. So yes, and so I used to read tax law books. I'm definitely into optimizing finances. So I still have to do everyone's taxes in my family. I say, hey, I don't want to do taxes anymore. They're like, Roshawnna, come on. But yeah, so everyone in my family knows about, my abilities. And I ever since I was a young age, a teenager, I put myself in kind of authority position with people around me to advise them on finances. So I've been doing this for a very long time and really want to allocate, my confidence to help others, because a lot of times women, especially women of color, Black women, are not provided with the confidence and expectation that we are good with money. And that's part of the reason there's such a gap in allocation of capital to us. We don't get the benefit of the doubt. And a lot of times we don't have that confidence in self that we can, go out and pursue any kind of financial decision that we'd like to pursue.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I know even in the technology space, especially doing your master's and your doctorate, I can imagine there's those systemic barriers that you were facing in that place. And then you were seeing that again in the financial awareness kind of component and people thinking, having certain perceptions based on the way you looked. And so I appreciate that insight. And this kind of leads me into, really looking at entrepreneurs and knowing that they are identifying problems and then seeing opportunities within those problems, and then sometimes just creating their own solutions to those. And I'm wondering, when you finally had that like pain point for EnrichHER to like recognize, hey, I have this idea and this solution, and what was that kind of pain point, and when did you decide to take that launch and building EnrichHER?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, while I was in the DC area, I noticed that so many people lacked, the resources and confidence to make financial decisions. And then in 2010 is when I decided to move back to Atlanta. So I did an exchange at Georgia Tech in undergrad from UC Santa Cruz, and realized that I wasn't the only person that looked like me who was also an engineer. So that was a huge aha moment for me. So that's why I decided to move to Atlanta. But when I moved to Atlanta, I initially started helping the homeless and working poor. And I know this is very common in the Bay Area. There's so many people who are fully employed but can't afford housing. So I decided to, help them with their finances for about 2 years. Then I founded a tax and accounting firm. And so many of my clients told me the same thing, like, hey, I have this great idea, I have all of this experience and all these skills, yet I can't get the support or capital that I need to push forward. And so what I did was I started attending every single pitch competition that I could. I started undergoing training. I went to angel groups. I took the Pipeline Angels boot camp in New York. And I really wanted to equip myself with all the knowledge about what are the issues that are preventing people from accessing the support, specifically with finance, that we need. And there is a lot of reasons why it doesn't exist. First of all, there are hardly any financial platforms run by Black women or women of color, just at all. Most of the fintech ecosystem does not. Diversity is not the thing when you think about the fintech ecosystem and who has access to the financial products to deploy to others. And then two, a lot of times when it comes to people of color or women, the solution that most supporters think is necessary is just advice and education. And there's lots of reports about this, like when a woman or a person of color, Black person says, hey, I need help growing my venture. More often than not, about 90% of the time, people say, oh, I'll just mentor you, or oh, why don't you go to this accelerator program, or why don't you do this? Which, no, we all need money to grow companies. Every single company needs money. And I said, you know what? I have this background. I have the work ethic. I have the tenacity. Why don't I, develop a platform that actually provides a solution to this problem?
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that part of the story, and really how you kind of were enriched in that kind of seeing that pain point with other businesses that you ran. I know you spoke to some of the accounting ones. Before we dive into EnrichHER, I would love to have you share a little bit about the Wealthy Yogi and kind of some of the work that you do in the mindfulness space, and recognizing, entrepreneurs do a lot of work alone, and there's a lot of isolation that comes with that, and wondering kind of how you're tackling that with the Wealthy Yogi.
Yeah, so great question. So I realized that I was like a type A, still flower child, but type A person who was an I'll be happy win. So every time I won an award, I was like, I want to win this award, I want to win that award, or I want to do this, right? And I was never in the present moment, and never really content with what I was doing. So my friend told me about this app called Dharma Seed, and I ended up listening to all these talks from Spirit Rock in Marin County for 2 years straight, to try to get me acclimated to mindfulness and the like. And it's funny because my friends are like, wait, it took you moving to Atlanta to like connect with this place in Marin? Like, how did this happen? And I'm like, it's just me, right? And so I ended up going to Vipassana retreats there for a while, like at least twice a year. And then I said, hey, I need to take this a level deeper. And so I decided that I needed to leave my company for a while, move to Thailand, study at an ashram in the mountains, and really focus on mindfulness and classic yoga full time. So at this ashram, there was no hot water. All the food that we ate was grown on the land. We had to be in meditation by 6 a.m. every day. There were strict rules. And, you know, here in the Western world, when we think about yoga, it's almost like that hardcore fitness yoga, but classic yoga is more meditative, it's slower. The goal is not to look like a model or anything like that. The goal is to really, you know, connect with self and, you know, be in the present moment. And while I was living in Thailand, I had an aha moment. And that aha moment was that we have everything that we need. We just need to clear out all the noise and stop comparing ourselves to others and stop complaining. Be in that present moment before you make any financial decisions. And so the yoga and the wealthy part was the synergy of these two concepts. And so when I got back to the States, I started leading workshops where we would go through yogic exercises and breathing techniques before we discussed like any kind of financial goals that we had or any business plans that we had. Because again, the goal is to, hey, what do you actually want? And a lot of times it's hard for us to know what we want when we have all of this noise bombarding our senses. And so that's where the wealthy yogi emerged. And I still believe that that's true. I mean, to this day, when I wake up every morning, I do my mindfulness practice every day and before I go to sleep. And I firmly believe that if more people did that, it would be easier for all of us to, you know, live a life in alignment with our goals.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I can definitely see it, especially, you know, as we talked earlier today, you'd already been on 3 live conversations, and
Yes.
just that like mindfulness has to quiet the mind and be centered when you come into situations like this. And so kind of transitioning us back to EnrichHER, and I'm kind of curious now that you've explained, you know, wealthy yogi more in depth, I'm curious if there's any concepts of that built into EnrichHER. But before we dive into that, kind of what is EnrichHER and how are you kind of, you know, building that bridge for underinvested founders and accessing that capital?
Yeah, so EnrichHER is a fintech platform that enables funders to provide capital to underinvested businesses. In addition, the platform offers coaching and a networking platform for these businesses to grow. So we were able to launch the funding piece of the platform in February of 2019. In 2019, we funded 71 companies from 47 states. And we have over 1,000 women-led businesses on our networking platform. And again, this is since last year. In 2020, we decided to step it up by partnering with more capital sources, deploying more resources that could help more women grow. And that's why we started the All Rise Factory. And the premise behind the All Rise Factory is that it's really difficult for those of us who are entrepreneurs to go at it alone. People were calling me saying, Roshawnna, I need help with my PPP application. I need help figuring out my budget. And they were kind of nervous, but they know that I love helping people with finance. And with so many phone calls that I received, I was like, we need to come together as a community, even for money. So with the All Rise Factory, EnrichHER actually provides initial capital to all of the companies that are selected. And this is paired with a community pledge process that provides additional capital to all of the companies. So on our platform, a funder, such as anyone on this call, can decide if they want to donate for a tax-deductible donation, if they want to lend to the companies in exchange for 5% interest, or for those companies that are startups or high-growth companies, they can go through a process to potentially participate in their equity raise. So the premise behind that is that there are so many different pockets of capital that exist. And I wanted to create a platform that eliminated all the excuses that capital providers have for, depending on the type of money that they have. So within the first couple of days, we raised about 80,000 for the current cohort. And our goal is to, of course, allocate a lot more. So in my bio, you mentioned that the goal is 50 million to deploy to underinvested companies across the country. And so in order to get there, we are partnering with other fintechs, CDFIs, banks, and people who are like-minded to get additional sources of capital to deploy to these founders.
Very interesting. This is more on a tactical level. I had a little bit about my background. I came from a nonprofit before this called Social Venture Partners. I'm curious if corporations are leveraging your like philanthropic component, and if that's a way they're investing into underinvested founders.
Well, we're definitely open to any corporation that has a philanthropic piece to work with us. So adding this philanthropic piece is actually new. So we launched that 3 weeks ago for the philanthropic piece. So we're still making inroads there. Our existing entities and individuals who are participating, we're participating for that return, that monthly recurring return that they could receive by lending capital through our platform. But we're definitely open. So if there's anyone listening that, has these kind of connections, please reach out to me. We love to, pair any kind of initiative with the companies on our platform. And you just reminded me, so we're in the final throes. I can't mention it just yet, but a really large corporation did reach out to partner with us to get more capital in the hands of Black business owners. So we are working on that as well.
Terrific. Well, be sure to share that news with us so we can help promote and brace in some of that success and wins with you. So looking at just, there's been success on the platform and tremendous growth, one on the founder engagement side, but also on the funder engagement side.
Yes.
But with that, I'm curious if you can share some of the barriers you faced in getting it launched, one systemically as a Black female founder, but also as the nature of the solution and working with the SEC. And I think it was like FINRA, which was like the financial, I'm not sure exactly what the acronym stands for, but so
it's like Financial Regulatory Authority. So I'll start with that piece. So we are the first company run by a Black woman that's ever been approved by the SEC and FINRA to do what we're doing. So clearly it's not easy to get through the process. It took about a year of legal back and forth, interviews, background checks, and the like to get through the process. And honestly, most people just give up. Of course, the legalese that the government has and their stance on what exact language you need to have to communicate with people is different than what most consumers want to see. So there's definitely a gap there, but it took a lot of attorneys who said, hey, I'll help you. I believe in the mission. And then one of my team members and I were both saying, hey, we're smart. We can read the law and figure this out, because it really racked up in legal fees. And we didn't want to allocate all the money that we had for EnrichHER for legal expenses. So he and I basically read all of these rulings and wrote up responses for the last 3 to 6 months of the process. So it's really like trusting in your own brilliance and trusting in self that say like, hey, no, I could do this. We all know this story about, Sarah Blakely figuring out how to, do legal work herself. And we kind of had to do that as well. So I feel very fortunate that I combat every problem with the expectation that I can figure it out from that regard. And that really helped us. So there was that. Secondly, I wanted to start with a lot of capital to deploy. So after we received we went through the regulatory process, we built a lot of partnerships with other fintechs and sources of capital. Most financial institutions and banks understand that women are lower risk than our male counterparts. So there's all this research that shows that if a woman entrepreneur closes her business and just stops doing everything about a business, more often than not, she'll still repay all of her debt. So, so most banks have this data, understand this. So it's more like a no-brainer to partner with us. So we were able to get 7 large partnerships before we launched. So that was wonderful. And then from my end, it was a humbling and shocking experience for me. So I mentioned that I grew up near the border of Mexico. So when I was young, everyone just assumed I was smart. So junior high and high school, I went to San Diego High School downtown, which was 90% people of color when I was there. I don't know what it is now, but it was 90% people of color. You know, I was valedictorian, cheerleader, all this stuff. So everyone assumed I was smart. And it wasn't until I went to UC Santa Cruz that I realized that that's not the expectation of a lot of people when they confront someone who looks like me. And when I went out to raise capital, I was confronted with that reality again. So a lot of people have all kinds of biases for Black women, especially who look a certain way, who have a certain hairstyle, who wear dresses. I love to wear dresses. It was definitely humbling. So for instance, I was told things such as, hey, you should find a technical co-founder to join your company, to which I replied, so my PhD in computer engineering, the focus in AI doesn't count as being technical. And that didn't happen one time. It happened at least 15 to 20 times that I was told I needed to find someone technical before they would give me a time of day. In addition, people were like, oh, you probably don't have any experience. And I said, well, I used to work for IBM Research, one of the most picky places to work in the world. Then I worked at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, which is another engineering institution. I was a management consultant for over 7 years, and I was the youngest director at this consulting firm. So how does none of this experience translate into you trusting me to run a startup, right? And so it's humbling, and now essentially I just accept that that's how some people think, and just focus on I just focus on people who are my advocates, who believe in me and believe in what I'm doing, and I don't really focus on those who don't believe, essentially.
Thank you for sharing that and the honest truth. And we were reaping the benefits of the hard work you've put forward and creating this, impactful platform that's, kind of reaching back and helping so many of women founders and minority founders as well. So can keep continuing the fight. And, as we continue through the conversation, would love to explore how ecosystems can, rally around that and really start to support minority founders. And so one question kind of on the platform, recognizing capital is, one of the main go-tos, as you heard, when you're running your accounting firm. Entrepreneurs are always like, where do I get capital? How do I access it? I'm wondering just if you could speak to why you focused on the early stage or nascent type of businesses for the platform and not some of that later stage capital. So wondering if you could kind of speak to that purpose.
Yeah, so we focus on companies that have been in business for at least a year and have at least 150,000 in revenue. And we focus on this segment because they have the cash flow necessary to repay loans. So our primary source of capital that we deploy is lending capital. And we wanted to provide significant resources. So our target amount of capital per business is between 50,000 and 250,000. And in order for us to lend that kind of capital, they need to have, the financial cash flow in order to repay. And we find that there are a lot of capital sources that focus on the micro loans, so the less than 10,000, or there are a lot of capital sources that focus on the later stage companies that can access millions of dollars at a time. And there's not that many sources that focus on that in-between stage.
Thank you for that. So now kind of switching gears. So this came about like a little bit in my research, exploring your websites, your podcasts, social media platforms. Quite honestly, I was amazed by the number of channels that you leverage, and can only imagine just the impact that tackling those channels has created for Enricher as well as your portfolio company. So I'd love to learn about how you've leveraged those different mediums and platforms to drive action towards your business and the portfolio companies within Enricher.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform. I have about 118,000 followers on LinkedIn. And even when I had my accounting platform, I used to blog for LinkedIn and would attract inbound requests for my services through blog articles. So it's always been one of my favorite platforms. And so what I do there now, I have a newsletter. So about, I think 700 people have native newsletters on the platform. So I have a newsletter where I feature stories of successful women. In addition, I do a LinkedIn Live. So I had a LinkedIn Live earlier where we featured a company called Handsome, which is a beauty tech platform out of Austin, Texas. And by having, thousands upon thousands of people engage with the content that I have on LinkedIn, we've been able to help founders get partnerships and customers and financial support. So people will reach out with all kinds of opportunities because they see all of the content that I put on LinkedIn. So that is by far my favorite platform. My second favorite platform is Instagram. I have a lot fewer followers. It's only about 50,000 on Instagram. But on Instagram, usually I receive a lot of media requests. So those could be TV shows, radio shows, documentary requests, and the like. And through those kinds of media, again, I'm able to reach funders who want to participate in our work and get the message out to additional people. So those are the two platforms that I've been able to leverage. So every single time I post on LinkedIn, we convert support every single time. So that's why if you follow me on LinkedIn, you're like, it's a lot right now, but that is simply because we're running this All Rise Factory campaign live, and I want to do all that I can to get resources, capital, and support for all of the companies in this cohort.
Yeah, I've since we got connected about a month ago, I've seen you constantly on LinkedIn Live, and love seeing that pop up and all the engagement with the thumbs up, the loves, and definitely using your platform to elevate entrepreneurs in your kind of All Rise Factory program, and really using that platform to elevate them. So one of the things, recognizing you have a national impact, as someone who's been involved in many startup ecosystems at different levels, such as local, state, national levels, what steps can community leaders or ecosystem builders do to make tangible change to our systems, particularly around support for minority or underinvested founders?
I think the first step is to listen to what people want or need. A lot of times we go out with our own vision as people who want to be ecosystem developers without the input of the community. And so I think that's the first step. So I've been an entrepreneur in DC area and Atlanta. So those are my two ecosystems. And I found that the DC area definitely wanted to hear more from founders about what we needed, and then had a mechanism for doing that. Whereas here in Atlanta, there are a lot of ecosystem, or I say entrepreneur support organizations who say, hey, I'm going to do it this way or that way. And a lot of us feel like none of the ways that people are doing it actually fulfill our needs. So I think that's the first thing that you could do, is the customer discovery piece, and then figure out, what parts of that you can actually provide to the entrepreneur community. Because of course, no one can do everything. But if people felt like they were heard, I think every ecosystem could be a bit better.
Thank you for that feedback. And definitely taking a dose of, our own medicine in terms of, talking about customer discovery and, telling entrepreneurs they need to go speak to their customers and recognizing that as ecosystem builders, or I like the way you phrased it, ecosystem developers, having that active listening and really support, with what the community wants. And I'm wondering, through that kind of active listening, have you found community groups or national organizations that you would go to as kind of key partners in growing ecosystems, and kind of, ones that you would be, huge advocates for looking at as kind of best practices?
So there are a lot of organizations that are doing amazing work, but I think my bandwidth is a bit limited. So outside of the work that we're doing for EnrichHER, the other organization that I'm a huge fan of is the Black Innovation Alliance. So this is a alliance of 50 ecosystem builders, so 50 entrepreneur support organizations across the country that come together to talk about best practices, to come together to go after funding initiatives and collective work. We just started this organization earlier this year, and the vision is that if more ecosystem builders can come together and share and collaborate, we can actually leverage our collective, history and insight and learnings to more positively impact other organizations. But there are a lot of really great organizations out there that I've witnessed. I've attended an event or here or there, and there's so many that are doing such amazing work.
Thank you for sharing that resources. I hadn't heard of them, so we'll look into it. It's the Black Innovation Alliance. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to kind of draw, I know we want to have time for question and answer. So before I can kind of conclude, wanted to see if you had any final thoughts or last words about kind of either EnrichHER, All Rise Factory, and just the impact that you're having. And then also just making sure that, we offer support in seeing how we as a community, even though we're in Sacramento, how can we support you and EnrichHER?
Yeah, so I would love it if everyone who's listening would go over to enricher.com and sign up for a funder account. So it's free to sign up for an account. And if you had some capital, we are running a campaign that asking for as little as $100 so that we can provide additional capital to the companies in our cohort. If you have more, we'll accept more, but I would love it if at minimum everyone will go to enricher.com, that's ENRICHHER, so 2 H's, and really join what we're doing. When you create an account, we have like a referral link as well so that you can like share it with your community. So we're really just trying to get the word out so that we can attract any kind of funder who's interested in allocating their money towards well-qualified, well-vetted companies. So that is my ask. And if you have, any questions as a funder, please reach out, because we really want to be that resource that you can use to support these communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Novellus, for your time and sharing your insights with me, and I appreciate the discussion. And then an additional thank you to Mariah for connecting us and bringing her into our Sacramento ecosystem. So I will turn it over to Jeff or Laura to head into the question and answer. But thank you again, Dr. Novellus.
Thank you, Cameron.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Novellus. So I wanted to give a shout out to, I didn't do it here in the big group, but I did in the breakout room. Thank you to Mariah for making the introduction. That was awesome. So in recognition of that, I wanted to give the first chance at a question to Mariah.
Okay.
Go, Mariah. I know you've got to have a question. Putting you on the spot.
I had a question in mind, but because I have the privilege of knowing Roshawnna through Village Capital, I was just going to leave it up to everybody to just soak it all in. But when you're speaking of customer discovery, the thing that really resonated for me is in the work that I do with early stage founders. A lot of what I hear is that even with crowdfunding, there's a gap that exists with the friends and family round. And
Yes.
So I just wanted to hear your thoughts and experience with that.
Yes. So most companies or most people that are women, people of color don't have a huge network of people who can give them that first capital in. And so for this specific reason, this is why we seed every single company on our platform with that initial capital. So they don't have to worry about getting that first check, because this is a huge problem that exists. And if you don't have that initial capital, how can you make it to stage 2, 3, and 4, right? And so one of the reasons that there isn't more inclusion in the entrepreneurship ecosystem is companies are not able to sustain to get to where they have that MVP or get to where they can show people that they can execute, because they need that initial capital. So with the work that I do, I also teach people how to apply for grants and the like. So beyond the $600,000 that I won for my college education, I also won over $600,000 in grant dollars for EnrichHER. And so having those grant dollars, having non-dilutive capital that I didn't have to repay, really helped us significantly in getting through some of the process of growing without having this friends and family. We didn't have a single person. There's not a single person who's related to me gave me $1 to start EnrichHER. So I'm also in this group, but I had to leverage my background in applying for grants to be able to grow this company to where it is.
Awesome. So thanks for that. So we'll open it up to questions. I don't see any questions in chat. I haven't been doing a good job of tracking the questions in chat. So
Or just blown away.
right. So if you have a question in chat, or if you want to just raise your Zoom hand, if you know how to do that, feel free. Let's open it up to questions. Anybody?
Well, I know I had some questions before, so I can answer those. I think I didn't answer them yet. So one question was, as a company, how can you get involved with EnrichHER? So companies can come to our platform and decide to be involved with our company through our annual membership. With that membership, you can apply to the All Rights Factory program, and it includes access to our online platform. On that online platform, we have over 1,000 companies that are currently members, and we provide, training and workshops every single week. So at least 2 per week, we have training to help you grow, and we have other resources. So if you're a company, we do offer those resources as well.
Awesome. I've seen a couple of questions pop in. The first one is from Amy Wister. What is your favorite book? So that's a question we get from a lot of people for founders, is popular reading recommendations.
So I'm on this kick now that I listen to study notes every single day. And I'll just tell you the top few that are on rotation. So those are The Power of Now, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, and The Strangest Secret. So I listen to all 3 of those like at least every other day. So I'm like really hardcore on consciousness and manifestation and law of attraction and all of those. And those 3 books have given me so much clarity. There are a lot of other books that I also like read, but not as frequently as I listen to those. I listen to The Strangest Secret every single day without fail. But yeah, those books, especially in this era of time where it's easy to get down and kind of depressed, it's really important to focus on your mindset before you go out into the world.
Awesome. Thank you. So I see, so I've got one from Kathy, and then Brent will be next after that. But is there anything you wish you were told or glad you did in your journey to get where you are? That one's from Kathy.
So I wish that I was told that, or let's say I accepted that I was enough from a younger age. I was told that from my mom. Like, she was like, daughter, you're doing enough. You're fantastic. You're great. And I'm like, only you think this. All mothers tell their kids that they're fantastic, but does the world believe this, right? So I really wish that I believed it for a younger age, because I know that a period of my life, especially during my 20s, I was trying to impress others, and convince others to believe in me, when the most important person to convince is yourself. And so that's one of the things that I wish I figured out at a younger age. And what was the second part of the question?
Was there anything you wish you were told or glad you did in your journey so anything you were glad you did in your journey to get where you are?
So I'm glad that at different times in my life, I just took a chance. So I'm a planner. I'm very organized, 3-5-year plans, right? But every once in a while, I just took a leap of faith and did something random. And like moving to Thailand was one of those. But even deciding to go to RPI was one of those things as well. So I was working in New York at IBM Research, and I befriended another person who was accepted to Carnegie Mellon with me. So we're both supposed to go there for our master's degree. And we both had the same Gates Millennium Scholarship that was a full ride to go to any grad school. He received a letter saying that since Carnegie Mellon, the program wasn't technically an engineering school, they weren't going to pay for it. So he called me, and I freaked out, like, what am I going to do? That's the only school I applied to. And he was like, I applied to University of Michigan. I'm going there instead. So I was like crying at work at IBM. And someone there working with me said, hey, I'll call RPI. I'm sure they'll accept you. You're amazing. But if I do this, you have to go. Even if it works out for Carnegie Mellon that they waive requirements, if I do this, you have to go. And I ended up, going to RPI, even though Carnegie Mellon waived the requirements for me and said, yes, we'll accept your scholarship and everything. But I had to keep my word. So I learned at a young age, like that the importance of me keeping my word, and doing like random shifts in my life. And I just really appreciated that,
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Brent, you've got your hand raised. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Great. Well, Dr. Novellus, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insight. I have a sort of an observation and a question. Observation is I feel, being able to participate in a lot of these discussions, I'm noticing that the entrepreneurial spirit, one has to be fairly optimistic or hopeful with their ideas, to put themselves out there, to get things started, to perhaps be rejected numerous times before, that one yes comes through, or maybe that several yeses that come through. You discussed, obviously, your experience with going to Thailand and being in an ashram and connecting into your mindfulness. And I can identify with that because I'm a practitioner of yoga, and I like meditation. I like yoga a lot. But I think, as far as that whole attitude or that positive attitude as an entrepreneur, to have an idea or a vision, and to put yourself out there in a vulnerable spot to go about this process, I think you have to be positive. And it sounds as though you're very positive. And I would imagine that most everyone on here who's an entrepreneur is very optimistic and hopeful. So what would you say to that young entrepreneur who doesn't quite know where the resources are or the ecosystems that we discussed about, maybe is 15, trying to do that fundraising for him or herself? What would you say to that person on the very basic level of trying to reach towards that entrepreneurial spirit? I know that's kind of a big question, but how did you and some of you go about that? Because there could be a lot of people who are just sort of in a negative state, just being born with a sort of a sour state and not as optimistic. How can you channel that? How do you get that?
Yeah, it's really difficult to be optimistic. It's really easy to be upset and negative. And, you know, when I was 15, I didn't give myself any grace in being negative. There was no space for doubt. I didn't feel that way. I knew my mother gave me everything she possibly could, and I would do anything to make sure she didn't worry about paying for me to go to college. As I got older, that's where more doubt came in. Like, is this person right that I'm not good enough? Or, you know, was it a bad decision that I attended UC Santa Cruz instead of another school that people respect more, you know, because I got a lot of that. Like, why'd you go there? And I was like, it was fine, you know? And so I had to really focus on mindset, and it was hard. It was this whole journey. I just decided that it was the most important thing. And people told me over the course of years that they felt like I was competing with myself and sabotaging myself because I would work all the time, yet I didn't fully believe that I deserved certain success. So I would achieve things, but I didn't give myself grace, or I didn't let myself enjoy it. And so that's why I said, hey, this is the most important thing that I could do is you know, go to this ashram. And I know that's not something that all of us have the opportunity to do, but it's really important to figure out the space that you need to be able to be positive, to deal with life through ups and downs. I think that's something that all of us can figure out. And most people who don't figure that out won't be successful. There are some people who are negative that are successful, but you have to like really figure out how to navigate like internally in the midst of the chaos externally. So I would just say, like, make that a priority. It could be, you know, going on certain walks. It could be, you know, being by yourself for a period of time. It could be meditation. And I would say just try different kinds of things to see what works. So the first thing that worked for me was physical activity. So I loved being a cheerleader even in college, because when I was cheering, I didn't worry about my grades on my engineering tests, right? I was just having fun and being in the present moment. And so I would start there and then, you know, grow from there.
It looks like, is it Wildra Washington had a question or clarification on earlier about the reading, perhaps?
Okay.
Did you want, okay.
Yeah, what question? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my last question was what 3 books were your favorites?
Oh, what did I say previously? So I said
I got
power.
one.
Oh, what's that?
Power of Now, and then there were
Yes.
2 others.
The Strangest Secret, and there's a spiritual solution to every problem. So that's Wayne Dyer. Strangest Secret is Earl Nightingale, and I forgot the author for Power of Now, but it's super popular. But I love those books. Like, inspire me to like just act with belief and faith like all the time, and with joy and love. So it's not only like work hard, work hard, work hard. I used to read a lot that was just like, hey, no excuses, just do. But that's not really correct. That I found, like, it's like you have to have this joy and peace and belief before you act. And so the 3 of these readings, and I listened to study notes on YouTube, they're all on YouTube, really helped me bridge the gap there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a question, Brian Fife has a question, but before I go to that, Cameron has a question, and Cynthia R just kind of had a tangent on that. How many hours exist in your day, or when do you sleep?
So I definitely sleep. I usually wake up between 4 and 6. So lately it's been like 6, but I love to wake up and listen to my first hour of affirmations and do a walk at the same time. Then I write in my journal. But I try to go to bed by 10 p.m. So I definitely get enough sleep. But I just integrate the self-care and the books through my day. So I used to listen to music all day long, but now I listen to the readings like over and over again all day long, every day.
All right. So Brian, you are up. Brian Fife.
Hi there.
Hi.
So yeah, my wife and I co-founded our business, and my wife is Latina, and I am a white male, but I'm generally the person that is running the day-to-day, and she's currently working in more of an advisory role. And we were looking into grants and funding for minority-owned companies, but to be frank, it's quite an awkward thing to be asking and considering when I'm the one that's in front more often, and she's more of playing a behind-the-scenes role. How would you approach this with regards to showcasing our brand as a partly owned by female minority?
So every program has its rules. Some programs, you know, they would say, yes, you're accepted in this as long as her role is a certain role. And other programs, they would say, no, that's not what we're looking for. So I would just like look at the rules and then go from there. Like some of them say, hey, as long as a woman owns, you know, 20 to 30% or more, it's fine. So, and for EnrichHER, we are focused on gender diverse teams. So as long as there's a woman in a leadership position at a company, you could qualify through us. But that's what I would suggest, is just look at, you know, the terms of each program and see if you fit.
Thank you.
All right, and I don't see any other, I have a question, but I want to make sure other people have an opportunity. Anybody else want to raise their Zoom hand? Mariah's raising her real hand. So.
I was going to put this in the chat, but I'll just ask because, you know, a couple of things just really resonated about what you've been talking about. And we hear a lot about the challenge of team building. I've met some members of your team. They're amazing team. So if you could just spend a second talking about how you built your team. And, you know, just given the experience that you shared about undergrad and the bias there, do you feel like living in Chocolate City of DC and Atlanta influenced your ability to either build a team, and likewise with like BIA and other affinity groups, has that influenced your ability to build team and or to just overcome some of these biases that you shared about before?
So the way that I build a team is focusing on my why. Like, I'm building EnrichHER so that all of us can grow together and prosper. And that has attracted all kinds of people from across the country. Like, I have team members in Virginia, Minnesota, and of course here in Atlanta. So I believe that a lot of people right now want to be affiliated with impact. They want to feel like they're doing something that matters. And so I was able to put my why first. And again, this is one of the benefits of social media. People reach out to me all the time to ask if they can volunteer or be part of my team. So it's usually inbound requests. So I think that is really important to connect, to allow people to connect with your story. And I have, like I said, a really diverse team. I've immigrants from, you know, different countries around the world. I have a woman that's disabled. I have a whole gamut of people. But secondly, your second question was about how living in DC and Atlanta has impacted me. Well, when I was 21 and went to Georgia Tech, that, like I said before, that was the first time that I knew that there were other Black women engineers who love to dress up and who are more like me. I'd never met anyone like me in my life. And that really gave me the confidence. So I was in this program at Tech, and my cohort said, oh, I want to be a medical doctor. Oh, I want to get a PhD. And out of the 20 of us, I think 90% of us have either a medical doctorate or a PhD. 90% of us who all met, who are all people of color, were able to like look at one another and say, oh, if you could do it, I could do it too. So that really, being in Atlanta gave me that boost to say, yeah, I could do it. But then living in these cities, it provides me a way not to be afraid of a lot of bias that I experience in other places. So I know that I could build my company without, you know, a layer of aggravation, I would say, that exists in other places.
Great, thank you. Anybody? So I see. Let's see. Brian has a follow-up, I think, on your team building, something related. I hadn't heard of chronotypes before. Using the idea of chronotypes, night owls versus morning people for your team.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you.
Brian, why don't you ask the question, Brian?
I can explain. So you talked about being a morning person and about, we talked earlier about how many hours of your day actually exist. I'm similar, but I actually work from like 11 to 4 in the morning.
Okay.
11 a.m. I sleep from 4 to 11, and I just thought I'd see if you had looked into like how you manage chronotypes, because you said your teams are all on different areas, and that is something I'm dealing with currently. And so I'm trying to kind of hire based on like when I need people, night, morning, et cetera.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that specifically, but I have hired people that are night people as well. I want to make sure that we are able to deliver like value to the people that we want to serve. As Cameron said, I took a nap to do this because it's almost 10, so I'm usually like in bed by now. Our chief risk officer, he doesn't go to sleep until 2 a.m. So when we deliver talks at night, he does all of those talks. So I specifically picked people with different expertise or different preferences in time so that we can kind of cover our needs throughout the day.
I love it. Yeah, it's chronotypes is something I just started looking into. I found it through Mind Valley. They were talking about how if you can pick people based on like where their mind is most fresh, that you can really motivate them to be better at their positions by really embracing when they best work.
Right, and for that reason, I don't have like fixed times for everyone to work, because for that exact reason.
Next we have, and I'm going to probably say this wrong, consciatus? Consciate us.
It's conscious.
Conscious,
Hi,
okay.
Conscious.
I appreciate it. So how's it going?
Great.
My question is, a lot of this can seem kind of like high level.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you had to kind of work your way up, of course, to doing the work that you're doing now, but to kind of break it down into pieces, like what do you think is like foundational for somebody that's starting and has a lot of ideas and even has like some foundation for the work they're doing, but just to kind of phase out and continue to build,
Yeah, so when I first had the idea, I just wanted to tell people and get their reaction. So do that customer discovery. And then one of my advisors said, it's not just about customer discovery, it's about, can you convince someone to give you money? And so I talked to enough people until I convinced a couple people to give me a little bit of money. And then I decided to start. But you're completely right. I was just by myself doing this for a time. I was so nervous. I didn't fully, as an introvert, I was still like scared of kind of telling people my idea. I didn't want them to think I was crazy or stupid or all of this. But I knew that I had to believe in my idea and tell people to believe in me in order to get anywhere. So that was the first step, was to get people to give me, small checks. And then after that, I decided to work on the MVP and start the process. But as a Black woman, it wasn't like I told someone the idea and I had all this money that would last me for months. No, it was like these checks lasted for one little project and then I would have to do it again. And every time I became more confident, more prepared, and was able to, draw more people into the vision. So I feel like it's like a process of knowing who you are and finding the right people who see you,
Definitely. Thank you for that.
All right. Anybody else? I've got one, but I want to give other people a chance. Anybody who hasn't asked a question, just burning to ask a question? I will go then. So it's not so much a question. I'm wondering if you could share a kind of like an impact story, a personal story that you've seen EnrichHER or All Rise Factory has been able to provide for a given founder or entrepreneur, some success or impact that you can share with the group.
Yeah, I'm going to share two. So last year I was in New Orleans for a contest, and there's a woman who was sitting next to me. And then she turns and looks at me and she's like, "Are you Roshawnna from EnrichHER?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You founded my company, or you funded my company." And she had a doggy treat company, and she wanted to purchase a building so that she could have her own, manufacturing and whatnot in-house. And she was just elated that she ran into me randomly in New Orleans, and she was able to do that and to, move to the next level of her business operations because of the capital that we are able to provide. And she's been, doing fantastically well. The second story I'll tell you, I always share this with everyone, is our first customer. Her name is Barbara Jones, and the founder of Lily R&B. And her main pain point is that even though she had a lot of revenue for her business and great contracts, she didn't have enough cash flow to qualify for traditional financing. And she needed additional cash flow so that she could onboard new employees and train them before putting them on a contract. So she was able to get funding from us. She was able to hire this employee, and she won additional contracts. And actually, she 4x'd her revenue for last year after she received funding through our platform. So whenever she tells this story, I'm just so elated, because sometimes it's just that little cushion of money that makes all the difference in the world in terms of capability, breathing room, right? A lot of us need breathing room to be able to give our best selves when we're pitching our business or getting contracts. And the fact that she was able to 4x her revenue for her business after receiving funding from us is like the best feeling in the world to have that impact on someone else.
Great, thank you. Jasper James has the next question. Do you want to ask the question, Jasper? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. Yeah, so I'm on the board of the SAC Black Chamber of Commerce, and so we work with a lot of brand new entrepreneurs who are just trying to get started. So if a Black business owner with no business experience found your website, how would you suggest them to engage with your website to get the most out of it?
Yeah, so for idea stage companies, the best thing is to engage with our platform. So on that platform, we offer courses. So I teach a 5-week course on teaching people how to access all the grants and the capital, similar to what I did. So I go through like my actual applications, my actual process, how I reach out on LinkedIn, like all of this to teach people how to, replicate what I did. We also have workshops, 2 workshops every week, and you'll have the ability to, network with 1,000 other business owners on our platform. So I think that is the best pathway for companies at the idea stage.
And for organizations that are past the idea stage and are really looking for capital?
Yeah, so someone who has been in business, has that revenue from customers, can apply to be part of our Rise Factory directly on our website. So we have all of our application is online, so someone can go in and fill out all their information and proceed from there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
More questions? Mariah, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, so when I first heard about the new initiative, you really were heartfelt in sharing part of what you experienced in making this like mini pandemic pivot. And one of the things that you said, which I know I had responded to, was that, you know, you mentioned the part, and there are studies around this about people not trusting Black women. And I really wanted to have you on here. I know a lot of people will probably compare us because we're two Black women in tech, and we're, you know, for people out here, they probably don't see as much of us as they do in other ecosystems, right? But we're very different, right? We're not a monolith. And, you know, at the same time, we do experience some of the same biases, right? And so you had mentioned like people not trusting us. And to me, I look at you and I'm like, I think people are afraid that you're going to take over the world, you know? But you mentioned just a lot of the internal things, and you shared with us some of the tools that you use to work through with meditation and mindfulness, some of the challenges that, you know, all entrepreneurs face. But you also mentioned, you know, thinking about going back to a 9-to-5. And I just wanted you to take a moment to share, like, how did you push through that? What was your inspiration? And what did you lean on to, you know, stay the course? And what do you think sparked that initial feeling before you squashed it?
Thank you, Mariah. You're trying to go in for the emotional piece. Okay, I'll share this. So for the first time
INFJ.
So for the first time in years, this year I felt defeated in April, right? We had a lot of major contracts that were revoked, as a lot of small business also experienced due to COVID. And I just wasn't sure that we were impacting people in the way that I wanted to be impactful. And what Mariah is discussing is that I told a couple people, hey, maybe I just want a job. And like 2 people offered me jobs on the spot. Like, hey, no, you can work for my company. And I'm like, oh. But I really had to, you know, go in and meditate and get, you know, a sign from the universe. So what I decided to do is give myself like 2 weeks to really be with myself. You know, I told, you know, some of my advisors that, hey, I want to talk because I have standing appointments with some people. And I'm like, I need 2 weeks to be by myself to figure out what I need to do with my team. Because I have, you know, 8 women who work for me, most of who have, you know, toddlers. So they rely on EnrichHER for their livelihood. And I said, okay, I have all this on my shoulders. What am I gonna do? Like, I need a sign, right? And somehow, some way, all of these amazing things started to happen. Amazing things. And I could just allocate it to this practice. So at that point, that's when I said, hey, I need to spend, like, at that point, 6 to 8 hours a day listening to these mindfulness talks and meditating. I'm not going to just push through and do my tasks. I really need to figure out what is me, what do I need to do? And because of all these miracles, I would say, happen in terms of support, you know, for the company and for what we were doing, I knew that this was the path and it was time for me to keep going. And I also knew that if I ever decided to step away, that I also had the support to do that if I decided to. But honestly, Mariah, I can't imagine having a job working for someone else. It's been 10 years since I've been a full-time entrepreneur. So, you know, once you make it this far, it's like, this is how life is going to be forever. So, but it was really hard. And I didn't remember what feeling defeated felt like, because as people said, like, I'm very positive. Like, when I get rejected and people tell me no, I don't let it affect me. And I just keep on going. But with the coronavirus, with, you know, these are 7-figure contracts that were pulled from my company, I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know. And people were calling me like, Roshawnna, what am I supposed to do? And I usually have advice for people just like this, just like how I'm able to answer questions so quickly. But during that period of time, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And I just knew that I needed to just go within and meditate and listen to these talks. And that brought me out of it. Thanks.
So Sonny joined us a little bit late, but he wanted to know, you've touched on it some, the impact of COVID on your business. Maybe elaborate that on a little more. Sonny, did you have any more kind of a nuance to that question? Maybe somebody stepped away. Is he there, Mariah?
It's upstairs and I'm downstairs. I don't know. I know that I told him, hey, you know, he knows I talk about Dr. Novellus, so I'm sure he wants to hear. I don't know what the context was though.
Yeah, well, so I think you talked a little bit about the personal impact of COVID and how meditation and mindfulness helped you get through that. But were there any specific pivots or that you had to take due to COVID?
Yeah. So how we had the platform set up last year was primarily dependent on capital from other fintechs and CDFIs and our other financial partners. What happened with COVID is a lot of capital sources dried up. They were afraid to lend, especially, and it still exists today, especially to traditional like gyms and bowling alleys and businesses that require a lot of human interaction. And so, which meant that like our ability to deploy capital to our founders kind of dried up. And so we had like record number of applications, yet the capital that was supposed to fulfill those applications wasn't there. So I'm like, I don't like how this feels. But on the good news about it was that we as Enricher weren't on the hook for any kind of bad loan. But the bad news was that someone else had control of the purse strings for us to deploy this capital. So as part of this, you know, journey that I had in self to figure out what to do, one of the miracles was that we were gifted our own fund to deploy capital directly to founders. So that is one of the miracles that happened. In addition, we got a whole bunch of funding out of the blue to run our business. So we're able to run Enricher now without being dependent on other fintechs and other capital providers. So that's one of the pivots. And then secondly, how we have the All Rise factory constructed is completely different. But at the time when I was feeling defeated, I didn't know that all of these resources were going to be available to us. And it was after I did that process that they appeared. So that's why I definitely in 2020 am a larger advocate of these processes, because sometimes, you know, it's something that you didn't plan for that is the path to go down.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
So I see a raised hand here, Lixa Anderson.
Hi, thanks, Jeff. Hi, Dr. Novellus. I have an opposite question. First of all, thank you for sharing all of your stories. It's been this whole session has been great. So what advice would you give to the opposite type of person that has been like in corporate career all her life and now is looking to make that leap of faith into starting her own company or starting her own business?
So both being in corporate and being an entrepreneur are fantastic. I think a lot of times people want to glamorize one or the other. So just understand like either pathway is fine. It was hard for me to transition because, you know, in corporate, you're fully funded and you have this entire team and there's no real urgency a lot to get stuff done very quickly and get data like that. So just understand it's going to be an adjustment in like the process and an adjustment in expectations of others, especially if you don't have a large team to do things for you. I've heard so many stories of people who like had an outbound mailbox and they forgot that they had to take mail out themselves, right? So a lot of the things you have to do as an entrepreneur, you may not have had to do in corporate America because you had other people around you that would do some of that work. In my case, I said, hey, I'm going to have a contract before I leave corporate America. Again, I like to be prepared. So I negotiated a contract with my consultancy and it was supposed to be a 2-year contract. 2 weeks after I quit, they said, oh, there was a clause in there that if they found someone else who could do the work, they didn't have to honor my contract, which I missed. So after 2 weeks, that contract was gone. And I thought I had you know, 2 years worth of money to figure out my entrepreneurship life. So I tell that story as often as possible, because a lot of us feel like if you do some kind of negotiation that way, that everything will be fine. But a lot of times in the whole entrepreneurship realm, things don't work out, and all you have to do is kind of keep going to figure out another way.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so we are getting close to the end here. And yeah, so as I'll echo Brent's thoughts there in the chat, we want to thank Roshawnna and Cameron for the interview and for joining us tonight. I did want to make sure that Roshawnna, that you can share with people what's the best way to follow you as far as web. We've put the link to the website in a few times, but social media accounts, what's the best way for people to engage with you?
Yeah, so again, to participate in the movement, go to EnrichHER.com. If you want to engage with me on social media, I'm all about LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my name in the world, so just put in Roshawnna in there and you'll definitely see me pop up. And so that is the best platform to engage with me on.
Awesome. So what I want to end with is, you're obviously not doing enough. So what's next? And I say that sarcastically in case somebody didn't give that. But so what's in the plans in the future? Where do you see yourself a year or two from now?
Well, of course, I want to deliver more impact to the communities that I serve. And for me personally, I am just focused on the integration between, you know, mental energy and physical energy and all this stuff I keep talking about, mindfulness, because a lot of times I default to willpower to push me to do all of these things. So I definitely intend to be a person that's more balanced in all of these realms so that I can, you know, impact more people. So I'm still going down this path, and I just want to be a little bit more gracious with myself and more happy and more fulfilled in general. I'm really happy now, as you can tell, and I want that to keep going.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, we hope that you do. You've been inspirational here, and really appreciate you joining us tonight. And thank you all for coming. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody back here in September, and we will reveal our guest then in a few weeks, or if not sooner. So thank you all again, and happy, Tuesday evening, and stay safe out there.